Fading Ads of St. Louis. That's next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Well, back before there were billboards or radio and TV commercials, there was the painted ad, and a new book captures, I guess, really a bygone era, what's left of it. Fading Ads of St. Louis is the latest from William Stage, who joins us now. Hi, William, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This has been an ongoing project for you. Let's set it up a little bit, though. When you're talking about fading ads, you're talking about the way we used to advertise, 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago.
Right. Painting commercial signs on the sides of brick buildings was one way to get the word out, but it was a very popular way. And large buildings in these big cities like St. Louis and Chicago and Cincinnati, they made perfect backdrops for advertisers to tout their products. So it was very popular. I think the heyday was probably from about, I'm going to say from 1880 to about 1950.
And so what you've done is you've really documented these things, because you call them fading ads because literally that's what's happening to them. They weren't really made to last. And the ones that are still here, of course, have been up on a wall for 100 years.
Right, in various phases of being faded away. And there are two types. The one type that's just always been there, fading away a little bit every year, and then another type that for one reason or another, got covered up.
Like they built a building next to it or something.
Right, got covered up maybe 50 years ago, and then in 2013, along comes a wrecking crew, and they knock down that building, and voila, there's an old sign that is really not so, that still looks new.
What's interesting, before I met you and got to know your work, I would see these faded signs and just kind of drive by, not pay much attention to them. But now I really notice them.
Yeah, that's true. It's contagious. Once you begin to see them, you begin to see more of them because you're looking harder, I suppose.
Right. Well, let's take a look at some of the images from your book. You took the photographs also, and there's a lot of text about the history of these faded ads. And what are we looking at here?
Well, this is a classic example of a commercial double exposure. It's Fletcher's Castoria, which it might still be around today. The slogan, "The kind you have always bought." That slogan, they didn't change that during the company's entire history. And that's painted over an older sign for Quaker Oats. And that's why it's a commercial double exposure, what I call that. It's also been called a palimpsest, which is a hard word for me to say. It's Palimpsest. Anyway, that was at the old Grand Olive Market at the corner of Grand and Olive. And I took that picture over 30 years ago when I worked at the health department. I carried my camera around with me then. But anyway, there wasn't, I think Fletcher's, okay, that one is another one where the building next to it was torn down. You can tell. You can tell because the words have a hue to them, like Castoria is yellowish.
Right, the fact that it still is retaining its color shows you
Right,
that.
it wouldn't be that way if it had been exposed to the elements for all those years.
Let's go to the next one.
That I found on South Jefferson, Royal Patent Flour. And you can see the picture of a flour sack on the left. And actually, that Royal Patent Flour was a St. Louis company. And Pillsbury bought them out.
Yeah,
So-
the interesting thing about your book, too, when you go through it, there are a lot of products that look very unfamiliar to us these days, products they don't make anymore.
Those are my favorite kind.
Yeah.
The kind that, the product is extinct. Or maybe the product is still there, but you're looking at some sort of old, naive or quaint ad copy for it.
Let's look at 3 more of the images from your book, Fading Ads of St. Louis.
That one I love. Admiral, the new cigarette. Nobody's ever heard of it. It's not made by a trust. In my mind, that dates this sign back to the time of Teddy Roosevelt, who was called the Trust Buster, breaking up the monopolies. So, cigarettes, like oil, had monopolies. And that was at North Grand Circle. And that
Up by the water tower.
Right. And up above, there's some, that's called a privilege, where you can see some words barely making them out. That was the name of the company that existed there. It was a confectionery. And it says something bakery and confectionery. Next line down, something, something, soda water and cigars. At any rate, there had to be a building next to it, judging by the vacant lot leading up to it. And that building got torn down. I came here in 1978. That sign was there. It couldn't have been there too much longer before I got here. And then, unfortunately, it got torn down. The building was in bad shape. It got torn down probably.
Which, unfortunately, that happens with a lot of shots you've taken,
Yeah, probably around 2000, the building got torn down.
Let's look at the next one.
Another favorite. That one's got a lot of history to it. Blanky's Coffee was a local brand. The CF Blanky Coffee and Tea Company was downtown. And the building is still there on South 14th. I'm sorry, 904 South 14th, right. And that figure there, this is not just an ordinary run-of-the-mill wall sign. That's Mephistopheles. If you know anything about the legend of Dr. Faustus, now I'm getting into, I'm getting into playwright history, but Goethe, the German playwright, he wrote a play called Faust, and in that play there was a devil or a devil's henchman named Mephistopheles, and he tempted Dr. Faust to, he would give him 24 years of his life where he could have all knowledge at his command and all power, any woman he wanted, but he had to sell his soul.
There's always a catch.
And and so this figure here was painted by a skilled portrait artist, who knew how to letter as well as paint.
Let's look at the next one, and I want to pick up on what you just said here after we do that.
Sure. ABC Bohemian Bottled Beer, the American Brewing Company. Where was that? It was on the hill. I took that photo a long time ago on the side of Roses on the Hill, which was a bocce garden. Now it's called Lorenzo's Trattoria, is it? Do you say Trattoria or Trattoria? I never know. But anyway.
I'll say yes.
That is a beautiful, nicely faded sign. That's a ghost sign, okay?
Because it's almost gone.
It's almost gone, right.
Yeah. Well, let me pick up on something, William, you said just a minute ago. You were talking about one of these faded signs that we were looking at was done by a portrait artist. Who were the people, and I guess they were guys back in those days, who did these ads? Were they finely trained artists? Were they, or not?
Well, probably some were self-taught, but I don't know any of their names. I do know that some came from Germany and Europe and, England, and they had training. They had to, because some of these, like on the cover of this book, I mean, look at that. That's like a photorealist painting almost. So it's a picture of a guy smoking a cigar, and it's hand-painted.
Right. Now that you've picked this up, this was a project you did a few years ago. It's sort of like your book, Fading Ads, but this is more of like a postcard format, though.
and it's a lot less expensive too. Yeah, my daughter and I did this. But back to these people, these kind are much more uncommon. They're not rare, but they're uncommon, where you get a pictorial, is what they're called. You get a pictorial along with the lettering, and some of these people probably doubled as landscape painters or portrait painters. They were painting on canvas one day and then painting on a wall the next day.
Let's take another look at another image from your book, Fading Ads of St. Louis, by our guest today, William Stage. And this was the way they used to advertise before there were billboards or TV or radio commercials. They painted the advertisements on the side of a brick wall, and we should have one coming up here in a minute. How many are in the book altogether?
Oh, I think about 65 or 70.
What's this one?
Okay, I need to say that's not my photo. That's my friend Ferd. He took that photo. And then he photoshopped it to really bring out the letters. You can do that with Photoshop. You can bring out detail and otherwise, and letters that otherwise wouldn't be very sharp. Mm-hmm. This is the Mound City Buggy Company. And it's interesting because it's on North Broadway, and you can see that it goes from horse and buggy to automobiles, because down below is the Halliday Auto Company. And it's a sign for pistons. They make piston rings. Mm-hmm. And up above, at the very top, on that strip, it's the Mound City Buggy Company, which is a horse and buggy manufacturer. And they were both in the same building at different times, I think.
I see.
But that might have been the same company. Yeah. They could have easily transitioned.
Yeah, what's really, I want to make a point about your book too. It contains all these great photographs, but there's a lot of text in there explaining things like we're talking about now, the history, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
We need to take a break, but we've got more from the book and more things to talk about when we come back. Our guest is William Stage, Fading Ads of St. Louis, and we'll be back right after this.
Hi, my name's CJ. A few years ago, my father became seriously ill. I did what I could do before he passed, but it took its toll. I lost my job, my house. I'm getting back on my feet, but I don't know when there'll be food on the table. How'd I do, CJ?
We could be twins.
Well, cousins, maybe.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
G-morning, sunshine. Wakey, wakey. Text me. Are your parents home later? We can hang. LUV, love you. JK. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back. Are you with your friends? That's lame. We're in a huge fight right now. XO. What'd you dream about? Something I did. Are you on your way to the mall? I'm lonely. Nude pics. Send me some. Text me.
I'm Steve Potter, and welcome back to City Corner. We're talking to William Stage today. His latest book is Fading Ads of St. Louis. And back before there were radio commercials, TV commercials, billboards, this was the way, the main way, I guess, besides print advertising, that businesses would advertise.
Right.
And what's interesting, William, too, a lot of these, you've been doing this for a long time. I'm guessing that when you start taking these pictures, you didn't know what you didn't know they were going to turn into a book, did you?
No, of course not.
You just loved them for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I like to document the archaic, as whatever it may be. I just always appreciate antiquity.
So you've taken the photographs, but I also just want to point out that people might remember your byline from the Riverfront Times. You wrote for them for a long time.
22 and a half years.
Wow. And you've done other writing along the way, and you've had an interesting assortment of jobs, haven't you?
Yeah, I have.
Everything from process serving to writing for a newspaper.
I came here as a public health officer.
Right.
Yeah, with CDC. And that's a whole other book in itself.
I bet it is. We'll get to that. Let's look at a few images from your new book, Fading Ads of St. Louis. And we have some things that you brought along that we want to talk about. So, what are we looking at here, William?
Oh, that one is, that's interesting. It's Sarasota flower. We've got a few of those here in the area. That one is a beautiful portrait of the, I guess he's called the Sarasota flower boy. And he's got a large knife. He's cutting a loaf of bread. What's interesting about that is that I did not take that picture. It was sent to me. But it came from Collinsville. And it's inside of a building. And what happened was that it had been on the outside.
And they moved it.
And no, they built around it.
Oh, I see.
And so what had been on the outside was on the inside.
I was going to say because the colors are so vibrant.
Right, and it's been perfectly preserved. It's at the time it was sent to me, which was a while back, probably 15 years ago. It was the interior of a dance studio over there, and there are all kinds of trading cards that show that same image.
What's this?
Coca-Cola relieves fatigue.
Is
Sold everywhere.
Is that the caffeine?
And I don't know if you can see it right now, but there is a 5-cent sign. So at the time, which was the turn of the century, 2 centuries ago, it was a nickel a bottle. And it relieves fatigue. That they have that on there because, I think you know why, because back then, supposedly,
Cocaine, right?
it had a coca extract.
Right.
And I don't know if anybody can really prove that, but it's common belief.
Right.
And so relieves fatigue. That slogan. I talked to an archivist. I think it left the Coca-Cola U-Verse around 1907. So that sign definitely is very close to 1900.
And all these were taken in St. Louis. What's this one?
No, I'm sorry. That last one was Belleville.
Oh, Belleville. Okay, right.
Oh, well, no, this one is a very old Quaker Oats taken in Midtown. That is the hand of the Quaker holding a box of Quaker Oats. And the whole feeling of the image is like a Grandma Moses painting, kind of a primitive folk art style. And that one, too, is quite old. It's got to be, I'm thinking between 1890 and 1905.
Let's go to the next one.
And that's long gone. This is what I call a three-dimensional business card. It's J. Selman Taylor on Grace and Potomac. You can still see the vestige of it. Cleaning, pressing, something else. I can't read. But it's just, there were a lot of wall signs like that where the merchant or the business owner just wanted the world to know his name and what he did.
Let's look at one more.
The Bird Hospital, formerly at 3109 Olive in Midtown. I don't know much about it, but it says experimental canary feeding station, for one thing.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I think it's open to interpretation. And it also says birds boarded and cared for. So if you're going on vacation and you wanted your cockatiel to have, to feel loved, you would take it there.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, let's look at some of the show and tell things you brought along today. Now, I don't know how clearly you'll be able to see this book at home, but you have this postcard that relates to a picture in your book. Would you just explain that?
Well, Domino Sugar, that picture there is still around. You can see it in Lafayette Square. It's on right there at the very large intersection of Lafayette Park. And I brought that along because I just was trying to illustrate how with national products, you can certainly, there's a big collectibles market for everything about that product. Everything, Domino Sugar, the postcard, you could buy it at a ephemera collector's club for, maybe $1. And you can learn a lot about these products by looking at the different ephemera associated with it.
Speaking of,
well, okay, that's from Harp Plug Cut. It's it was a tobacco, that's a tobacco pouch from the John Weiser Tobacco Company in St. Louis, which existed for well over 130 years. Well, not well over, about 130. And there is another brand of his tobacco. You can see it downtown. It says Big John. It's right down by the Broadway Oyster Bar, down around Eat Right Diner. And I brought that just to show, because I also have different tobacco labels that say Big John on them, but I didn't bring one with me, so I brought this just to show that, Alpenbrau Beer, Columbia Brewing Company. Now that is a ice pick with advertising on it, and there are 2 Alpenbrau wall signs here in St. Louis, and just another adjunct to the different, for every type of medium, there's another type. Brick walls.
and how do these cards relate to what we're talking about today? We've got
That's
this
just
one.
that's from McLaughlin Coffee Company. We don't have any McLaughlin Coffee Company.
So would this have been on the side of a building wall too in a larger size?
Yes, it could have been. Easily, yeah.
And then show the other one that you've got there with the baby. That's sort of amusing.
Mail pouch, tobacco. Now here's a baby. It says.
This would not be politically correct today.
No, it would not. Just found his mail pouch, and then here's the tobacco next to him in a mail pouch. Now that exact rendering is seen on mail pouch tobacco walls. I just brought these along to show how the different types of media relate to each other in advertising. You've got outdoor advertising, and then you've got the collectible market, the ephemera. And they both are dovetail real nice. And you can learn a lot about the products from this type of thing.
Well, William, you've been shooting these fading ads for a long time now. Do you have any handle on, have you found all of them in the area? Are there some that you haven't seen, do you think?
New ones pop up all the time.
You mean new old ones is what you mean?
New old ones.
Yeah.
And in fact, I have a website. I want to give it a plug real quick, paintedad.com. Well, I take it pretty seriously, and I blog on that thing, and I go out looking for new signs, and I find them.
Well, I told you about one before we started the show that I saw, and you're going to go check that out.
I am.
Yeah. Paintedads.com.
Right. Painted ad.
Paintedad.
Yeah.
.com. So
And
maybe if somebody knows the one, they should shoot you a message. Right?
The people are invited to comment on the different I post. So it's kind of like publishing. It's like I'm publishing a magazine. So I take maybe a half a dozen images, including one that you touched on, like new stuff out there. I have a recent post called Recent Finds, where I have found, good half dozen.
And because the thing about this, you've mentioned how buildings, well, they're deteriorating on their own, the signs, because they're out in the elements, and sometimes the buildings get torn down. So these are things that are not going to be here forever.
No, they won't.
Let's look at some more images in the minutes we have left from your book, Fading Ads of St. Louis, with William Stage. Go ahead, William.
Well, the beautifully named Dreamland Candy Shop. You could just imagine children, like in front of the glass case, drooling at the candy inside. But that's done in Soulard. on, I think on Victor and 12th.
Let's go to the next one. What's this?
That is a gold medal flower sign being torn down almost as fast, probably within days after it first appeared. Really kind of a shame. You know, look how colorful
When
it
you
is.
say appeared, you mean it was behind another wall and they
Right.
tore that down?
They
and-
tore down the building next to it, exposed that wall, and then they kept on going.
So sad. Let's look at the next one.
Bull Durham, great, great wall sign over in Collinsville. It's on the main street in Collinsville. Now that one is kind of controversial because it has been touched up. And it was done by a wall dog here in St. Louis named Lonnie Tedeton. And it was done at the behest of the owner of the building. And certain people in Collinsville didn't want it done because there aren't that many Bull Durham wall signs in the country that are not touched up.
That's beautiful, though. Let's look at one more.
That is one that's been touched up and done really well. That's in Troy, and the local high school art department has touched it up a few times in about the last 20 years. That they,
And before we go, would you just really quick show us your cameras
I will.
that you brought with us?
I was telling you before the show that this old Pentax K1000, I used this for 40 years to photograph.
Do you
not,
still-
not 40 years,
do you
no,
still shoot
30,
with it?
30 years. I do, but it's getting harder and harder to buy film and get it processed.
Right.
I shot film until 2013. But now, I finally borrowed my daughter's digital.
Now, I know a lot of photographers that were slow to get into the digital
Yeah,
thing.
and I'm one of them. I went kicking and screaming into digital, but I like it. For one thing, it's got a built-in wide angle, and you can really, sometimes you find yourself in a gangway or an alley, and there's not much room to photograph a sign, but you can get a lot of it with the wide angle that's in here. Now, in fact, there was a Studebaker sign, took up a whole alley. I couldn't, and there was buildings on the other side of it. I couldn't get far enough back to
Well, I want to remind people about your website again, your blog.
paintedad.com.
So, well, I want you to keep doing what you're doing. This has been an ongoing project with William Stage, Fading Ads of St. Louis, documenting really a bygone era. And it's an interesting book, beautiful photographs, and I just love it. And thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm Steve Potter, and that's it for this edition of City Corner. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.